Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Africam's Wild Moments, brought to you by explore.org. My name is James Henry, and I'm speaking to you from, well, my room. And as you can see, I've got some very pretty wallpaper behind me, none of which are African animals, I'm afraid. Joining us today, we have got the great Russell Gerber, who has got an African animal behind him. It looks to be a leopard. Hello, Russell. Right, I can't hear Russell at all.
Well, let's try that again.
I can
How's
hear you
that?
now. Good.
Yes, indeed, James. Leopard, once again, your game ranging skills never cease to amaze. And that is 100% a leopard over there.
Fantastic.
I thought it's suitable for the show for the day.
Yes, as opposed to your bottles of good scotch.
Yes, they're hidden behind the leopard. So
Yes.
there's
Fair
some good
enough.
scotch there.
If you haven't watched this show before, everyone, it's a show where we take the week's highlights from the camera, sometimes not always from this week, from all the cameras that we have dotted around Southern Africa. And we will discuss the odd and strange behavior that we see. Sometimes it's just amazing behavior, sometimes it's just a pretty scene, but we'll take a look at probably 4 or 5 clips during the course of the next half an hour. Please feel free to ask us any questions that you might like to on whatever stream you happen to be watching this show. We'd love to hear from you. It's always helpful to have some interaction from you. Otherwise, you just have Russell and I waffling in your ears for the next half an hour, and it's quite nice if you are interacting with us. Before we tee off with the first clip, I'm going to ask a question from Susan, who says, how has the world's changing climate affected the animals of Africa? Russell, do you want to have a go at this one?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if it's affected all animals, it's affected everyone. I think, from an African point of view, the most obvious effect really would be, what is generally a dry continent. We've had longer dry spells, the general cycle that people often refer to, scientists often refer to, of around 7 to 10 years, I think has changed a little. We're seeing longer dry spells. We've seen a lot of areas that have not had rain for 10 years now extend to 20 years. And then the opposite, when you do get the deluge of summer rain that many of our safari locations get, that we then get heavy rains that perhaps were not quite as extreme as they are now. But it's always difficult to measure because it takes such a long time to notice any severe differences. But as a guide, working in the field for, let's say, the last 20 years, I'd say for me, definitely longer and drier spells. I feel that the animals are often more concentrated around your permanent water sources, whether it be a man-made lake or your bigger river systems here in Southern Africa. So yeah, I think that's the major impact that I've noticed, James, for Africa.
I think it's difficult to say, specifically this African animal has been affected by climate change, but I think Russell's absolutely correct. The dry spells do seem to become getting longer. The wetter spells do seem to be wetter, but whether or not that's just an extreme rotation that we're seeing, it's difficult to say. It could well be climate change. I think that things like, I know that there have been some fairly unusual outbreaks of locusts in various parts of the Karoo. In fact, recently. Does that have to do with climate change? I don't really know, quite possibly. But I think the other interesting thing, or the other animals that it perhaps has affected slightly, are the birds, which do seem to be arriving earlier in some cases than they used to. So summer seems to start a little earlier than it has before. Again, we're looking at a sample size of 1 or 2 or 3 years. But I think that there does seem to be a trend of birds coming down here earlier. And that would definitely, to my mind, indicate some kind of swing, possibly as a result of climate change.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I mean, the magnificent map Ives, one of the very famous naturalists and guides from Botswana, in one of his books, touted a similar kind of argument that it's actually very difficult to attribute specific acts and events to climate change, where Africa as an environment is extreme in its nature,
Yeah.
and so we don't know if it's simply on a longer time scale or if it is indeed climate change. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. Certainly not a simple one. And I mean, I think you could get climate scientists in here and discuss this for hours and still not come out with an agreement. I think we're all agreed that climate change is occurring, human induced climate change is occurring. Exactly what its effects are right now on our fauna in Africa, difficult to say. Some greetings from Judy H. Hello, Judy H. James, you say, James, aren't flamingos African? Certainly, we get two species of flamingo here. I'm not sure exactly what this is referring to, but yes. But there are other species, which I know that you know. There are species in South America as well that are not African. They're South American. Hello, Anna Emerson. You say good morning from Boston. Hello, yes, you're here with us every week, which is great. And this is for you, Russell. And Bob says he lives in a place called Kalamazoo. Got absolutely no idea where that is. And he says, congratulations to you, Russell.
Oh, thank you, Bob. And I know where Kalamazoo is. That was the home and the founding town of Gibson Guitars, James.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
I should know that. I don't own a Gibson, so maybe that's why I don't.
Okay, well, you got to keep saving up then.
All right, let's move on to our first clip. I'll just get my wife to cue it up. Now, this is quite interesting. That is obviously two squirrels. The bigger one, looks to be a male, I think. It seems to have a fairly large scrotum poking out from behind its tail, which we'll have a look at now. There, you can see that's sticking out there. And what's interesting here is that it's grooming a youngster. And we'll get another look now. That looks to me like a penis and a scrotum, which indicates that is a male. Well, in fact, if it is a scrotum and a penis, it's definitely a male. And it's looking after this baby, playing with it, cleaning it, obviously chaperoning it at the water here. And that's quite interesting because it's not something you normally associate with male mammal behavior. We know that the male birds are excellent fathers, but male mammals tend to be fairly poor fathers. Russ, do you think that was a male, or do you think that there was perhaps something going on that I'm not seeing?
No, I'm with you. It looked like a male. I have experience with small young males at the moment, so that looks to me like a young male. And as dodgy as that sounds, I had a new son, so that's not that I hang around schools or anything like that. It's just simply that that to me that certainly looks like a little boy. And I've actually never really seen a lot of male squirrels behave like that, I have to say. It was quite interesting for me as well. I mean, for the most part, whenever you see them hanging around and really paying a lot of attention to the kiddies, tends to be the females. Have you seen that a lot before, James?
I don't think I've ever seen that before. And I actually, I looked at this clip beforehand and I did a little bit of reading on it. And it does say that, a squirrel group tends to be sort of like a family almost, with one or two males who may or may not be related, and they look after the entire group. Up to 7 females and their youngsters. And so I think probably what we're looking at here is one of the males in the group. It's not the thickest set squirrel I've ever seen, which makes me think maybe it's quite young, and it's just kind of looking after the little one, which I think is quite cool.
I think I've also read somewhere that in those little groups, and I think, as you say, there's a few little small mammals in southern Africa that do that they actually also basically scent mark each other as well.
Yes.
To kind of
yes.
improve those bonds. I think that's right.
I read the delightful phrase, they anally mark each other, which once I re-swallowed my lunch, I thought was quite possibly something that was going on over there. But again, I think I always used to say this on the live safaris that whenever we saw male mammals behaving like we expect and hope human fathers will behave, it always gives us a sort of heartwarming feeling. And that's certainly the feeling that I got from that, because so often it's not the case. So often the youngsters being bashed to pieces by by either its father or by an errant male. We know that infanticide is obviously a massive thing in mammals specifically. Kelly, you say, wow, what a super dad squirrel. Yes, what a super great dad squirrel. And thank you, Judy H. Sorry, I'm very slow. You say my wallpaper's got flamingos on it. So it does. It's also got jaguars. And in fact, there's a zebra there. So there are some African mammals there. Thank you very much. Okay, I think let's move on to our next clip and see what that one's about. Now, this is our python who has been lurking here. Oh, and
Just a
that,
feather.
everyone, is a feather belonging to the dove. Now, if we could watch that again, there we go, in slow-mo. Dove, very quick, loses its bits of its tail, but it could be much worse. I mean, that is wonderful. Just, can we watch that again, that last little slow-mo bit? Watch how the entire snake, how it coils. It sort of loads like a spring and then explodes forward. Now, for those of you who have been watching, this python has been hanging around on this stick, I don't know how long, probably for about 4 weeks now, almost.
Yeah, like a month he's been hanging around
Yeah.
there, or she.
And I mean, we discussed him last week, and I think he's learned, or she's learned, that that's a good place to catch birds. And the birds, who are supposed to be cleverer than reptiles, really don't seem to have learned very quickly that there's a python sitting over there.
Yeah, I have to say, with the success rate of that python in the last couple of weeks, that that little dove can consider itself pretty lucky to be alive and not missing just one feather.
Yeah.
Can't believe it missed. It was really close.
Yeah, I think it's astounding. I also think it's a testament to ye olde common dove, because we tend to think of these doves as, I mean, we hardly pay them any attention, but they're actually unbelievably fast. And I remember driving along a road once, luckily it was a fairly flat road with some guests, and we clocked a dove flying flat at about 70 kilometers an hour. I mean, they are really, really fast. And their reaction speed is obviously immensely quick because, I mean, one of their major predators is the peregrine falcon, which is the fastest bird in the world. So I think it's quite remarkable.
It is amazing. I mean, you as you say, we overlook them all the time. I mean, they've got to be everybody's sort of least interested bird. I think as a guide, I must have taken the longest to learn the different doves and pigeons because you're just like, okay, really? Do I have to learn that they're different ones? Come on.
And is anybody going to ask me what the difference is because it's a dove, you know?
And I have to say, most people don't. But hey, we learn.
No. I can't actually recall ever saying to some new guests, what would you like to see? And them saying, you know, we've come out here to Africa and spent our life savings, and what we'd really like to see is some doves, please. I don't think anyone's ever said that, ever, when coming on safari.
Nope, I have not heard that myself.
Anyway, what is interesting about that python as well is that I'm not sure, I've been casting aspersions on the bird's intelligence and their ability to avoid him, but I think that certainly the camera hasn't picked him catching as many birds as he has in the last few weeks. Now, obviously, the camera's not always on him. And I wonder if some of the bird species who are more resident there, those little waxbills and golden-breasted buntings and some of the firefinches, haven't got wise to the fact that there's a python over there, owing to the fact that their families have become somewhat diminished during the course of the last month. Maybe.
Yeah. What was the first one we saw? It was a Prinia, wasn't it? I think it was
I think it
the
was,
first.
yes.
Yeah,
Or a
yeah,
Cameroptera, one of the two, yeah.
yeah, something like that that got
Yeah,
nailed by a python. I have to say, it's been super cool having
yeah,
that chap hang around for the last month or so. I mean, it's fun just to watch him because anything can happen any
yeah.
second.
And a
But
question
like
here
you
from
say,
Judy
that
H saying, does the snake know how well camouflaged it is? Judy, I don't think it's conscious of it. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, it does it have an inkling as to which parts of the background that it lies against may hide it better than others? Or is it just perfectly colored for its habitat? I would say that it's not particularly aware, and I still think that it decided that this branch was a good place to come and bask. And I think that it's learnt that this is a good place to catch birds. So, I mean, if it's capable of learning that, perhaps it is capable of learning the substrate against which it's going to be most camouflaged, GDH. I don't know. I, my understanding, as I said last week, was that reptiles are fairly dim-witted and unable to learn hugely. Um, so I don't know. Quite possibly it's learnt that this is a good place. I think more likely it's learnt that this is a good place to catch food, not that it's necessarily well camouflaged on this branch. Good. OMG 23, you say tough luck, Monty. For those of you who don't know what OMG 23 is talking about, I think the viewers have named that python, very clever python, Monty. I think Einstein would probably be more appropriate, but Monty it is. Um, on
Monty
Christine
Python. Come on,
Valentino.
James. That's
Oh,
fabulous.
I see, yes. Yes, no, I didn't even get that. That's really pathetic.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
it's late
yes,
on a
okay.
Thursday. Don't worry about it.
I got it now. OMG 23, yes, much better name than Einstein. Okay, I've got it now. On Christine and Valentina, you say lazy python or smart snake. Probably a bit of both. And you know, as I may have told you last week, a python in Afrikaans is a lei slum, which means lazy snake. I think this is a slim slum, which means a clever snake, or a sort of slim, well fed, at least not so well fed snake. Up to you. All right, let's move on from Monty, the Python, and go to our next clip now. Right, now that is a steenbok, and it is being mercilessly hunted by a slender mongoose. Again, this is not something I have ever seen before. This is
No,
quite
nor me.
bizarre.
I thought it was actually really funny. I mean, sometimes you'll see the bigger mongooses perhaps, bothering or taking on a bigger mammal for
Yeah.
whatever reason, but I've never seen a little slender mongoose be so adamant that this this Steenbok has invaded its territory. Clearly,
I mean, it's bizarre.
it is bizarre.
Like you say, I've seen a grey mongoose having a go at a baby blue duiker, but I mean, it was bigger than the baby blue duiker.
Yeah,
I mean, that mongoose
yeah,
can't weigh
exactly.
more than that mongoose can't weigh more than what, a kilogram?
Yeah, at best. I mean, there's
Yeah,
it makes it makes no sense. I mean, come on, it's got to be one of the things why being in the bush is so fun because
yeah,
that there's no real way to explain that.
no,
It's no behavior
no,
you can attribute to
no,
from the book and say, oh yeah,
mm-mm,
this makes sense.
yeah. I think it's also another reason that these static cameras, in the absence of any humanity or game drive vehicles or that sort of thing, are actually unique in their ability to capture behavior that we wouldn't see otherwise. If we're driven up there in a game drive vehicle, the Steenbok definitely would have increased distance, moved away. Slender mongoose never hang, or very, very seldom hang around. And I just don't think
Mm.
we would have seen an interaction like that. And so it's a really nice, positive kind of affirmation for having these cameras where they are. Yeah, like you say, it's not something that can be explained. They are not something that share diet, so there's no competition. Uh, it's not like there isn't enough water, so it's not like there's a water resource issue. Steenbok
No.
can be without water. And it's really difficult to think that the mongoose actually thought it was going to get a meal out of that Steenbok. So, again, I always come down to when I see something like this, I start to think, well, is this not just play behavior? Is it not just actually having a laugh? It's found enough food for the day, its stomach's full, it's lying in the shade. Here comes a Steenbok. Well, I'm a bit bored, so why don't I get up and do
Yeah.
something?
Here's something completely non-threatening,
Yeah,
and perhaps I can bully it in some way.
yeah,
That's what I'll do.
yeah.
Yeah, why not?
So I would put it down to playing again. I know that I seem to be doing that a lot every time I see a bit of behavior I can't explain, but I think playing is really quite a nice way um, to to describe what we saw there because I can't think of any other explanation. If anybody else can, feel free to send through whatever you think you were witnessing there with a 1 kilogram Slender mongoose and an 11 kilogram or 10 kilogram Steenbok. So 10 times the difference in mass. Very, very unusual. Alrighty, let's go to the next one from here. Right, a peaceful
It's
scene
another
at a
one.
waterhole. Everything looks calm and gentle. The low felt afternoon has set in until dun dun dun. Bull giraffe coming up to have a drink, and two elephants showing a great deal of displeasure. And the giraffe not waiting to find out what's going on there. Let's watch that again. I can't tell if that's a bull or a cow, can you?
I think it's a young bull. I think they both are.
Yeah, I would have
Now,
said that
actually,
that was
I,
most likely.
I got this question the other day on the show on Tuesday.
Mm.
Same sort of thing. On the live cams, we had a zebra approach the water, and the elephant decided, "No, thank you. We don't really want you around here." And somebody asked why. Why do elephants do that? And in many ways, sure, you could put it down to resources. You could put it down to competition, but I often think it's something big like an elephant. You normally say, well, it's because they can, and they
Yeah,
they just get
because
they
they
get
can.
grumpy and annoyed.
Mm.
With the mongoose, it's much smaller, so it's you don't normally attribute it because it can, but again,
Yeah,
play is quite common, and I think
yeah.
elephants do that sometimes as just a form of play, especially for the young boys. I think you see it quite often, but again, very
Yeah, for
difficult to
me,
attribute it.
I come round to that again and again. Young male mammal will behave like an idiot. And, from a human being down to a mongoose, once they get to that pubescent age, they'll behave like an idiot. They'll try themselves out. They'll irritate everyone. It's why they get tossed out of the herd around about that age because they just become too irritating to be around. And so they bug whatever else they can. And I guess it's a way of kind of feeling out their strength, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It could be. I mean, you think of whenever you see elephants in huge numbers in one location, and then often the big boys are around sniffing out for the potential of mating. I mean, you see the herds and the females are absolutely stressed out of their minds for the time that
Mm,
they have to hang around all those
yes,
other big boys,
yeah,
and you see all the signs that they are stressed out, and because the males are boisterous and rough and
yeah,
have one thing on their mind and can often
mm,
cause real issues for the young
yeah,
calves. Yeah, I think, as you say, man, the males are just nuts, especially young ones. So
yeah.
I can't think of another
And it's
reason why.
fascinating to see. And I mean, obviously, you do. There is an element of resource protection in a drought. You do see the elephants chasing things like buffalo and hippo out of water, or rhino away from water during droughts. That's relatively common, but I mean, there's absolutely no shortage of water in the Lowveld right now. I mean, that river that you're looking at right now is in the same reserve. There are lots of pans around there. So yeah, I think just as Pounce D says, a grouchy elephant, and just testing his strength possibly. And I mean, if I'd be very interested to see if that giraffe had stood his ground, it would have been very interesting to see what the elephant did, because I doubt he would have made physical contact.
Agreed. I mean, I'll never forget my first walk with when I was doing guide training, and we were tracking elephant on foot, and we came across a young bull who had fairly recently left the herd. Maybe he'd been alone for 3 or 4 years, and I'll never forget our guide trainer who was walking in front came across this bull, and he turned on us and he gave us the good old head shake and started marching towards us. And I was a young pup, and I watched this, man's man clap his hands at this giant mammal, and thinking, okay, well, this is how we die, and this is the end. And he clapped his hands, and I'm just watching, astounded. And of course, as always, these young males completely chicken out when they get confronted by something. And the old elephant just stopped, turned on its heels, and ran off trumpeting into the bushes. And that was the day I knew I needed to be a safari guide. I'll say
Yes.
that as well. But as you say, the boys big and brave until they get challenged. It would have been really funny to see that giraffe
Yeah,
stop.
and it was a big giraffe too. Yeah,
Yeah.
but once he'd started running, there was no chance.
Nope.
A quick question from Anna. How long can a mongoose live in Africa, and what do they prey on? Anna, there are lots and lots of species of mongoose, 5 different species just in that area there. That's a slender mongoose. And I mean, Russell, they eat scorpions, they'll eat rodents if they can get them. They are carnivores. They'll eat termites, any other kind of insects that they can find. I think they have birds if they can catch them, if nestlings, eggs. I think they basically will eat any animal product that they can overpower and possibly even scavenge on. Do you know
Yeah,
that's about right?
small reptiles. I mean, the
Yeah, reptiles.
famously snakes too. Mainly
Of course.
people
Yeah,
think
yeah,
they hunt them, but they'll do that for mainly defense. But they will eat
mm,
them. Once
yeah,
they kill them. Yeah, they're actually amazing little carnivores. They're
yeah,
quite underrated as pretty voracious and successful
yeah,
in what they do.
yeah. I mean, the slender mongoose is actually quite famous for its snake killing abilities. Again, like you
Mm.
say, mainly for defense, I think. But I've seen footage of them taking out black mambas singly on their own. They just wear the snake down, jump in, bite it, and out so fast that the snake just has no chance. At a speed that a human being could never hope to match. So, yeah, voracious carnivores of anything that they can overpower.
Yeah.
All righty, let's have one. We've only got a minute left. Let's have a quick look at the other clip. We've got one lined up. It's just quite an interesting clip here of a bat either trying to impress this owl or trying to make it go away. Regardless, the owl is
I
utterly
wonder.
disinterested.
I can only imagine it was simply hunting in the same area. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't fathom why the bat would be bothered by the owl
no.
in this instance. I know we have great Africam footage of a barn owl catching a bat, but as you say, this this owl is not even looking in the
Not
direction
even
of the bat.
twitching. I mean,
No,
maybe the bat is unable to recognize the difference between the different species of owls, and it decided that
sure.
actually the spotted eagle owl was a bit of a threat. But I mean, I think that's rather amazing. I also think there's so many bat species. If I'm not mistaken, the order Chiroptera, to which the bats belong, is the biggest mammalian order, and it's probably the one we know least about. Bats are
Mm.
very difficult to study. I don't think that a lot of zoologists go to university and decide that they're going to try and identify and study bats. And once you do study them, I mean, studying their behavior and their communication and their interactions between each other, I mean, nigh on impossible, I would have thought.
Yeah, I had my head of department actually at university. He specialized in bats, if you can believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
His great love was bats, and like you say, the research, just getting it done, was really expensive because
mm,
you needed
yeah,
gear like for audio, picking up certain calls that could
yeah,
help to identify. But anything else, behavioral, very very difficult
yeah.
to get on, especially on all the species they are.
Yeah. All right, so we'll put that down to him either hunting in the same vicinity as the owl or not being a particularly effective ornithologist and thinking perhaps that it was a barn owl who was going to catch him. All right, everybody, that's going to be it from us for Wild Moments. Join us next week, please, for another Wild Moments brought to you by explore.org. Until then, stay safe and happy wherever you happen to be on planet Earth. Bye bye. From me
Ciao,
and from
everyone.
Russ.
See you next week.